Double Primer is back-to-back conversations with someone passionate about their work and passionate about someone else's work. Mostly art and mostly Atlanta. I'm your host, Sean Mills.
Historically, we know that there was this thing called the Iliad, and then this spin-off character ends up being the hero of the Odyssey. Does that all track so far? So for the Argos, one of the guys was the pilot, and then after he died, another guy was supposed to inherit his farm, and he was a particularly cruel guy named Anchias. So when he was told he was going to inherit this vineyard, a slave said, "You're never going to enjoy a wine from this vineyard," just haughtily, threw out this prediction. And he was like, oh yeah, we'll see about that. So he pours a glass of wine, and he's about to drink it when he gets news that there's a fire in the vineyard, and the slave has set the field on fire. And so when Anchias goes out to put out the flames, he actually dies in the conflagration. The punchline is this moral statement, which is, much can happen between the lip and the cup. So even when you think you're about to have victory, it could be not as guaranteed as you think. That is going to be my little example of irony. Does that sound ironic to you?
It does. And, it's funny. I have to jump right in that I make a constant reference to something that Tanju said to me early on in our makerspace encounters when we first became friends, is that it's always something. And ironically, we always say, you think you're just about to, like he was working on his car, the Power Wheels car. And just about the time he thought he had it ready to go, about to jump in it and drive, we'd find some flaw and something wrong
or something broken. Yeah, so it's not like casually like it's always something. It's like, oh dang, it's always something. Or you're going to go to the space and a tool's broken, right? You want to use.
That's mine, right? Because that's my rant all the time. But there's some truth to that though, and it goes. I mean, Sean pointed out that's a very old quote. Something always there's a long distance between lips to. What was the quote again? I'm sorry.
From the lip to the cup, and there's lots of versions.
Yeah, there's so many things that could go wrong just when you think. And it's interesting they call that irony because it almost in a way that phrase doesn't sound ironic, but it does describe irony, I suppose.
That's going to be a perfect lead-in. And you said there's always something. There's something happening right now is we have a special guest named Bret Lanius. So welcome to Double Primer, episode 34, recorded on February 20th, 2019. I'm your host, Sean, joined by Tanju and Bret. So, Bret, Tanju, what's trending in your world?
I'll let Tanju start.
Right. So, trending. There's something trending on Twitter right now that involves politics and Fox News that I think is pretty interesting, but I actually don't want to get too into it because I'd like the show to remain to be a fun show. But I don't know if you guys want to go there.
So, Tanju, I'm going to reject your appeal to neutrality with this kind of idea. So, are you guys familiar with the sort of storm surrounding Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
A little bit.
There's this really interesting thing happening where she is held up as this icon of socialism, and so there was this image where it showed from a news graphic that these are the things she wants. She wants 70% tax on the rich. She wants universal health care. And what's so interesting is that both sides are showing the same image, but they're both having opposite reactions. So the CNN shows it, and her people are like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. And then the Fox News people are looking at it and saying, look, she admitted it. This is what she wants.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how perspectives.
Well, I also think it's kind of funny how it seems like we're all, everybody's very excited about she's brand new. She was a bartender, a year ago?
Yeah, that's amazing.
She's a young freshman, congressperson who doesn't have a lot of experience. And I think that's kind of exciting. I have kids near her age, and I was encouraging them strongly to get, involved in politics, regardless whether I agree with everything my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's in that her demographic, whether I agree with all of her politics or not wasn't really the issue. It's about, where we go forward. I mean, I'm older than both of you guys quite a bit. They're not going to hurt me. If the environment lasts another 20 years, I'm good, right? Yeah. And but for her, the stakes are higher because you have to get into this because these are going to be your representatives for your lifetime.
Yeah.
My first presidential election was it Reagan Carter?
Wow.
So I've had my time.
Yeah, so before we get into the making piece, then maybe we just move on to the inspiration topic for this week, Sean. So it's your turn this week. What's your inspiration topic here?
I'm focusing on a book called A Rhetoric of Irony by Wayne C. Booth.
Touching on the theme from the opening as well?
Exactly.
The irony. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
is this a recent book or this is one that's been out?
It's from 1970. But okay. I find that a lot of the things written in it are sort of now coming around to having a new kind of relevance, or at least like maybe audiences are catching up to him. So have you guys ever heard of like a sort of therapy term called emotional bids?
Emotional bids? No.
Yeah. Psychologists kind of believe that in order to have a healthy relationship, when people make bids, you try to match them. And so the idea is that if someone says hi, they're basically saying like, I see you. In whatever gesture it may be, maybe they put toothpaste on your toothbrush, maybe they ask you like how you're feeling, whatever it is, the sort of actual messages that they're saying, I like you, I want to be with you. And if you do these things, that means you end up having a strong relationship. The idea is that like recognizing bids and matching them is key to having a good relationship. So that's already a lot to swallow, right? The connection to irony is that the way that this author kind of understands and sort of diagrams irony is to basically say most people focus on the wrong things about irony. They focus about trying to find a victim, and they ignore the importance of irony, which is that it's really an opportunity to try to bond with your audience. So if we go back to that story of Anchias and the slave, and you were to ask, and you beautifully brought it up, Bret. Like I couldn't have scripted it better. That you were saying like I can't really tell exactly what the irony is. I kind of feel it, but I might not be able to express it. And so the tricky part can be when you're like, okay, what was the ironic part? And then you could have an argument. You could say, well, I think it's because he expected to be able to drink the cup, but he wasn't able to.
Definition of irony still undefined. I mean, it's sort of like, remember that song, Alanis Morissette? Isn't that ironic? Right, because she did that song, and in the song, supposedly there's all these examples of irony, and then the criticisms of the song were that those aren't ironic, they were something else. I don't exactly...
But what dovetails nicely about this theory is that right now, people's most common experience with irony is that they understand it from like what they learned in high school, which was that in Romeo and Juliet, there's this thing called irony. Something is expected and it doesn't happen. And then if they go any further, it's that they understand sarcasm. What was said was the opposite of what was meant, right? So if you actually look up, and I did right before this podcast, that Alanis Morissette song, Isn't It Ironic? There's a part in it that is textbook irony. It can't be argued. So a guy is falling out of an airplane, and he says, isn't this nice? Which is, you can't interpret that any way but that it's the opposite of what he actually thinks, which is it's not nice, right?
Right. Which is almost sarcastic.
Right, exactly. So why this is such an awesome example of the song is that people love to kind of educate others, I'm saying that sarcastically, by saying it's not actually ironic, it's just poetically coincidental.
Yeah, and I think that's how that song was described a lot of times.
Right.
It was coincidental. I think that was the word I was looking for earlier.
Okay, so what Booth kind of says is, you guys are going to get caught up in the wrong details. You're worried about, like, is everything she's saying literally the opposite of what she means? What's actually happening is that she, as the author, is asking her audience to say, do you kind of see where I'm coming from? Do you see things the way I see things? And then she uses all these examples of, like, if you're falling out of an airplane, we both understand that that's not a nice thing to have happen, right? Mm-hmm. I don't have to spell it out for you. We both just get it. Mm-hmm. So what Booth says is, too many people get caught up in that kind of irony from the story that I told you first, about the lip in the cup. He says, let me tell you another story that is the one I want you to use as an example. So have you ever heard of a character called Alexandria, either of you?
No.
So he was a character that was codified as like a stock character by Aristotle. Basically, like all comedies ever has a character like Alexandria. And this is one of the first. Okay? So Alexandria is a soldier, and he's a soldier that considers himself brave, and he considers himself capable. He is told by the king, I want you to go collect taxes from the cities that aren't paying taxes. So he takes his men, and he marches to all these cities. He goes, and when they see them marching, they kind of see the error of their ways, and they present their tribute to the king. This all goes well and good until they get to the last town, kind of on the outskirts. And as they're getting there, he passes a soldier from that town, and the soldier says, what are you guys doing? Alexandria says, we're on our way to get our tribute. The guy says, you'll never make it. You're not going to get a cent from us. And Alexandria says, pretty sure we will. And he looks back at his soldiers. So the guy turns around to go back to his city, and his compatriots say, like, oh, should we kill him? You know, he'll warn the town. And Alexandria says, no, like, it doesn't matter what he says, we'll be able to handle them. And his other soldier says, well, should we at least, like, kidnap him and, like, bring him as a prisoner, and it will be like an example? They're like, no, it doesn't matter what he does. We're going to be able to handle him. So they keep marching, and in their path is a bunch of boulders. So Alexandria says, like, well, this isn't going to stop me. He has all his men spend all day moving the boulders. So they get up, they're ready to go to that town, when a freak flash storm comes. It's so violent that they can't really see 2 feet in front of them. So he says, well, let's just camp tonight. Tomorrow we'll go to that town. They wake up the next day. A courier has come and said, oh, the king wants to congratulate you for sending all these tributes. You're welcome to come back to the city and get your next commission. So Alexandria says, well, I guess I have to obey the king's orders. And he goes back to the capital and leaves that little town alone. So what ends up happening here is that guy was right. He didn't make it to the town. Mm-hmm. Who would you say is the victim of irony in this story, if you had to?
It's Alexandria, right?
Yeah.
Alexandria thought he was...
he didn't accomplish what he had stated.
Right.
They could...
So, but unlike the last victim, that Antiochus guy who died in the fire, this guy, he's actually kind of an innocent victim, in a sense. You know? He had a justified belief. He had done the job before. He had the numbers on his side. It just didn't happen to come true. Right? So Booth says that we should think about irony as creating Alexandric groups called communities of expectations, not think about the victim. Because the victim can sometimes be hard to pinpoint. The victim can sometimes deny that he's a victim. So in actual real life, how often could you probably relate to this, that someone tries to be sarcastic and then another person doesn't get it? Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah.
But there was still irony, right? We're being sarcastic whether they got it or not. Mm-hmm. So that's why Booth's sort of methodology is kind of useful, because he kind of diagrams the expectations, even if they don't.
So what you're saying is Booth is trying to push us back to a more Aristotle era version or understanding of irony, in that it's more about the sort of I'm trying to think of a better way to put it. Like my joke that I say all the time. I used to think the brain was the most amazing part of the human body, but then I realized, look what's telling me. Yeah, and there's actually a quote from Time Magazine about that. That's actually a specific, it's more scientific. It says the great irony of human intelligence is that the only species on Earth capable of reason, complex problem solving, long-term planning, and consciousness understands so little about the organ that makes it all possible, the brain.
Yeah, I was actually going to see if there's a spin here about, like, my recent experience is not so much irony per se, but like this concept of like just be cool about something. So this is something I struggle with at the makerspace because I'm a kind of a central figure there, but my goal is to have the place be kind of decentralized is something that I'm trying to make happen, but still have rules, in particular around safety, right? So, so people want to know what the rules are, but then they don't like the rules. And then, so I kind of like, a lot of times will look the other way and kind of shrug my shoulders. But if they see, and to let somebody do whatever it is they're wanting to do. But then if somebody else sees it, I literally have people, like, I'm like, are you like in third grade? You got to be tattling on somebody, right? About whatever they're doing. Like, I don't care, like they mean well, they're doing something that's moderately interesting and, they're cleaning up after themselves or whatever. And then they get called out, and then the other person's like, was this really the rules or not? Like, what did you say? And I'm like, dude, it doesn't matter, right? Like, just do it discreetly.
Well, I think, I think that's one of the things about the makerspace that people sometimes don't quite know how to handle is that, it's, most organizations have, like, codified, hardcore rules and a leadership of, like staff or whatever that oversee those things. But yeah, I think people inherently want rules. Does that make sense? I mean, I think.
Yeah, and so sometimes I think I'll be like, God, if you just were just cool about it, whatever. Mm-hmm. That's actually a very vague term, right? But, but to me, like, I have a very clean definition of what I think being cool about something is. Just be cool about it, and we can make it work. And I'm starting to be like, well, I guess to the same this like irony thing is for a lot of people, like, they either don't. I've actually literally in the last couple months I've been thinking like, I guess some of these people just don't know what cool is. Like, they just don't know. They can't handle it, right? And I need to like back up and go, okay, I can't just expect that everyone has the same perspective on it, right? About what that means or what that. It just is too ambiguous.
Like, it's funny you bring up rules because I actually wrote up like some rules for irony, like in the spirit of Booth. So, have you seen or read the book Fight Club?
It's only the movie.
Not the book, yeah, the movie, yeah.
Okay, so like in parallel to Fight Club, I had some like rules to understand irony. So one is the first rule of Irony Club is you don't talk about Irony Club. So this means is that it needs to be covert.
That's ironic.
Covert, not overt. So like if you have to tell someone put your glasses on to use the wood shop, that's not very cool. They should already understand. Like if you make the gesture like you point at your eyes, they should know enough about the rules of using the tools that should remind them, oh, I need to use safety glasses. It's not cool if you have to say it like a teacher, like, all right, boys and girls, we need our glasses, right? So the second rule of Irony Club is you don't talk about Irony Club, which means that you can only give clues. You don't actually explicitly say it, even if they don't get it, right? So you point your eyes, they don't get it, and then then your next step of using irony would be to say, oh, I wonder, what if there was a device that I could cover my eyes that would protect them? That would be great. What if someone invented that, right?
If only such technology existed.
Right. And then the third rule of Irony Club is, if this is your first time at Irony Club, you must irony. So the idea is that for this person you're talking to show that they're on your side, the way that they would do it would be like, instead of saying like, oh yeah, you're telling me to put my glasses and put their glasses on, that would be destroying the game. What they would need to do would be to say like, oh, what is this, a prison? Or they would say something like, they would play with you, like, yeah, I wish there could be something to cover my eyes. Maybe it would start with a G. What could it be? Could it be GOGS? Could it be, you know what I mean? The idea is that they would play with you. They wouldn't throw the game away.
Which, as you were saying that, I could hear our friend Mike's voice speaking to me.
He does that a lot.
Yeah, that's exactly how he would speak to me about that sort of thing.
Yeah,
also.
Go ahead.
No, I was just also remember the time where we had a member. We were at the old space, and we were by the Air Force Base, so big planes buzzing by.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it'd be cool if we go on the roof. Can we go on the roof? No, we're not allowed on the roof. Oh, but then if the Blue Angels ever come by, it'd be cool to go up there and have a picnic while the Blue Angels, we sort of joke about that. And then it's leave it at that. Then 2 days later, he's on Slack, publicly. Hey, I figured out how to get on the roof. It's really cool up there, and here's the ladder. It's dude, if you're gonna go up there, just don't tell people about it.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is such a perfect timing for you to bring that up. So, as an author, Booth uses as a metaphor that irony is about reconstructing meaning. The meaning is destroyed because I'm saying something the opposite of what I actually mean. So you're inviting the audience to reconstruct it. And so what he's saying is that when you say things, ironically, you're standing on the roof and you're inviting people up on the roof because the view is better, because it's cooler up here. And your invitation is irony. Now, they can refuse the call. This is the case of when they don't get the sarcasm, right? Or they could be unrehearsed and they could be prejudiced. So it can fail in many ways. But what irony is happening is that you're inviting people up on your level, whether they end up coming with you or not, right? So that's where that emotional bid thing comes on. So if you were like, yeah, man, I wish there was something to cover my eyes with, that's an invitation to say, see things from my point of view. Don't we agree as a group that we should remember to put goggles on? And don't we think that it goes beyond saying at this point? That's what irony is to Booth. That's that invitation.
So I'm curious, is this a book you're currently reading or you recently read?
I read it and it was a bolt from the blue, that it's man, this is changing everything. It's really giving me insight.
So that's what I'm curious to hear about. How is that inspiring, into your work or your daily life? How is that?
Okay, so, Bret, you just had a quick glimpse of my website, right?
Yeah.
Did you see anything on there that seemed ironic in any of the imagery, or did it seem very, explicit?
That's a good question. I don't know that I had enough time to digest it all, but because I was mostly looking at your portraits, because that's something my wife really likes, and so she's kind of got me looking at portraits. But I chided you a bit beforehand, talking about the erogenous zones of the face. It's about the details, but ironic. No, I don't know that I noticed anything. I might on further perusal, but
yeah,
nothing jumped out as ironic.
That's perfectly fine. So, what I think of irony and why I feel like it blends into my concept of art making is that you guys have heard in architecture the term form follows function.
Yeah.
So in terms of art making, I like the idea of art is geometry plus irony. So geometry is the arrangement of shapes and their relation to each other, right? So that's that formal part, what the image looks like. Irony is the relationship I have as an artist with my audience. Do you follow me so far?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so if you just have a picture of a person, it stops there. It's just, is it well executed? Do I find it pretty, right? Mm-hmm. Irony is what allows us to share a moment, that I'm sharing a moment with my audience. So for instance, the first thing you do is you try to get good at capturing likenesses. The second thing I'm trying to do by adding irony is I'm making a sort of shared moment. So, for instance, I have a painting where it's a painting of a woman, but her face is covered. So then there's a layer of irony. It's covering her face, so it's why are you painting it if it's a portrait covering her face? Now, on top of that, I drew a face on the cover of the magazine so that it's, that thing of it's she's wearing a mask. So that it's like you have the image. That's the first part. You have this experience of just whatever you get out of that, capturing an image, all the shapes, all the colors. Then by adding a layer of irony, it adds like
that. Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I don't know that I saw that as ironic, but I can see where. Yeah, I can see where that was sort of the impetus of the thought. It's kind of weird. I kind of was like, all of a sudden I was in work mode. I was thinking about how I work at my actual job. In that, one of the things I do, I have a weird job that people don't. It's hard to describe. I'm a camera assistant on TV and movies, and the weird thing is the main thing I do is keep things in focus. And sometimes I don't focus on the person talking. And it's about directing the viewer to about what's important in the image. And sometimes it's about the reaction to what's being spoken. Does that make sense? I mean,
absolutely.
Is that something that you're able to influence what the focus is on, or is that the director or something?
On the good jobs, yes. The show that I just finished that's airing right now that I've actually been enjoying watching, which is rare. There was a couple scenes. I remember I watched it with my wife, and at the end I went back and I said, "You got to watch that scene again," because I left an actor while he was still talking. Because and it's subtle, and it was something I did without instruction. Mm-hmm. But it only happens when you have a good director who understands what I do and appreciates what That's when my job's fun. Honestly, is I captured. There's this like little moment. It's a foreshadowing that comes in the next episode about character relationships. And it's so subtle that I doubt any audience member would ever realize it or notice it. But the fact that the reaction was more important than the words subconsciously sets you up for the next episode. When you see how that plays out, it makes more sense. You're there, even though you don't consciously appreciate what happened. And it was such a subtle thing. And that's when what I do for a living is actually fun, is when I get to do those kind of little moments.
Yeah, definitely. I think it definitely overlaps with that concept, I think. And so just to bring it back to that specific point, I was going to say, so forget irony as you know it. There are many types of irony, there's historical irony, this guy thought this was going to happen, it didn't happen. There's sarcasm, there's all sorts. But so irony, I'm saying from Booth's perspective, is the one that I use in my artwork. I'm saying that I'm using my artwork as a bid with my audience to say, look at this thing with me, take that step, to look from my perspective, or that it could be our shared perspective, right? Maybe it could be as simple as, I think this is beautiful, I think you might think it's beautiful too. But it's basically this invitation to share a perspective. Even though, so the irony is that it's we're not the same person. Maybe we're not even there at the same time. Maybe that image exists after I'm dead, but that an audience can still share that perspective. That's that kind of irony of it's not actually true, but it's still true in a certain way, right? Just like when you're using your video, your framing, your focus is that it's, even though explicitly words are being said, maybe the bigger issue is focusing on the reaction, right? That's the actual point, even though there's the explicit and then there's the implicit. And you even touched on that there's the conscious and the subconscious too, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I don't know, Tanju, would you feel comfortable if we diagrammed your example of irony from last week?
From last week?
Yeah. So, do you remember the story you had where you told your son that, are you playing Minecraft? Do you remember that?
The joke, the Minecraft and the nuclear eject.
Yeah. So I'm going to diagram that moment of irony from Booth's perspective, all right? So to set the scene again, Tanju comes home. He sees his son playing a video game. He kind of asks sarcastically about the game, kind of hinting at ignorance that he doesn't actually have. Like, he knows what's going on, but he kind of pretends like he doesn't know. The kid reacts predictably and says, like, basically, like, buzz off, like, leave me alone, right? So I wanted to kind of unpack that from Booth's perspective, right? So the irony is that there's communities of expectation. The idea is that both of you understand that men of a certain age don't play games anymore. And you both understand that young men do play games, right? Not only do young men know about the games, they play the games. And not just play the games, but he's playing that game right now. So in this moment, you're kind of playing out your roles of expectation. You're playing the idiot dad who doesn't know what's going on. Now, what's interesting is that you shared a very kind of insider knowledge, which is the fact that you have an account where when he purchases a game, you know it because it's your account, right?
Right.
So you both know that you know what the game is. That's why it's ironic. That you're sharing the knowledge that he knows that you know that he knows he knows, right?
You know what? I knew you were going to go there.
All the way through.
I knew you were going to go there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I know that you know.
And what's so fun is that, so what you were doing in that moment wasn't trying to hurt his feelings. What you were doing was saying, like, you were basically saying, hi, I know about that game. And then and what he's doing is he's playing along. Like, he would just be like, yeah, it's that game that went to your email. That would be that'd be like a rejection. What he did was he played his part too.
Right.
So that's what is fun about Booth is that it's like people get too caught up. Like, if they were a spectator and they saw that scene, they're like, oh, they have a bad relationship. Like, he's having he's going through a teenage spell or something. But like,
or declare a winner in the exchange. Yeah.
Exactly. But the winner is that you both understood the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think to your point, like, we acknowledged each other, right? Because it does bother me sometimes that I come home and he's zoned into his game, and if I don't say hello, he may not even know I'm in the room, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I want to say hello and be acknowledged, also acknowledge that I see him there, but maybe do it in a more fun way that it can kind of flow with the moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's pretty cool, yeah.
Well, then you can't resist an opportunity to irritate him.
Yeah, well, and then I know right there, right? You can hear through the mic, so I have a split second before he mutes.
Right. Actually, I don't know if you guys know a guy named Dave Barry used to write for a Florida newspaper. He had a story about how he felt his job as a dad was to embarrass his kids.
Right.
And the part of the story was he got the opportunity to drive the Wienermobile. And his first thought was, I've got to pick my kid up from school in this. Because he'll hate it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. Sort of, my wife always gives me a hard time when I intentionally do things that I know will get a rise out of my kids.
So, like, just to kind of hammer the point home once more time, I was going to say that audience aspect that you're saying that they're like you have 3 seconds before he mutes the mic, right? Mm-hmm. That's a really cool element of it because what's going on there is that you know that you two are sharing something, and by making like that performance where you pretend like you think it's Minecraft or whatever, the audience on the mic doesn't know that. Right? So basically you're inviting your son to say, like, me and you share information that they don't have. Like, you're saying, like, join me, my son, in this moment.
Yeah, I think you nailed that, John. I think you totally nailed that.
So, like, lots of ideas, but I found that kind of insight into irony, that kind of take was very interesting for me, and it's something that I still kind of like noodle with and tinker with, and I want to just go back to that geometry example where it's like many people, unlike yourselves, the last time they think about geometry was in geometry class, but then that doesn't mean they stop using it. because every day, like, they're using geometry to, like, figure out how to park, right? They only use it on an intuitive level. They don't think critically about it. So what we're doing with irony is the same thing people do with geometry, which is that we're just thinking critically about it, even though everyone uses it all the time naturally.
So I'm curious, like, is this like a long book? How many pages roughly is it like?
So
I looked it up earlier.
I actually bought the hardcover copy version, even though it was like $30. It's like 200 pages,
Right.
I think.
Yeah, so it's like an inch thick or something like that.
Yeah, it wasn't big. I remember looking it up this morning.
You can read it in like a weekend, might not understand it, but you could read it.
Well, yeah, I read like the first handful of pages that were available for free, and kind of went, like I got a little glossy-eyed after that.
Yeah.
I have a feeling Sean's a little more intellectual than I am.
I don't know about that, but
There's a lot of history.
it intrigues me.
My daughter's a history buff, and even my son he's more of a history buff than me. Sometimes I'll bring up some stuff from history, and I'm like, I thought I knew. I've never actually studied history formally, but I thought I knew a little bit. But talking to you, Sean, in particular, you'll bring up some stuff. I'm like, I have no idea. Never heard that reference. Don't know, but that's cool. Oh, that's cool. That's part of why I enjoy the discussions.
So is this a good time to check in with you and see how your work's coming along?
Yeah, so I don't know how we're going to keep up with the little bit of the irony thread here. But yeah, work, I guess the work I'm currently working on has got me obsessed is continuing to work on these decorative hangboards for rock climbing. Made some progress over the last couple weeks, and a couple different designs now that I've come up with. I gave two prototypes away to some friends, and gotten some pretty good feedback. Everybody that sees them, their eyes kind of light up.
That's great.
Which is pretty cool. When I'm describing it, the funny thing is when I'm describing it or they're just seeing a photograph, they definitely don't get it. They're just like, oh, that looks neat.
That's not surprising, Tanju. That's not that
Yeah.
surprising.
And then they put their hands on it and they're like, wow, this is really cool. So that's been cool. That's been cool. And I think the one thing that is a little ironic, though, is I really wanted to kind of break new ground and do something very decorative, and that's pushing the envelope a little too far. Like with Brian, it was too radical, right, for them to be like, this is for hanging on and training. This doesn't look right. So I did dial
the one that was the name of the place.
No, the one that I don't know if you saw it, Brett. It was the Hawaiian Islands, and then Mina, my daughter, painted it with blending the blue oceans.
Oh, yeah, you showed me a picture of it.
Super colorful. That one was a little bit too much. The one where it's just like the trail signs of the location, when it's just the words themselves, it's a little bit of a stretch, but then one of them I actually just put a little rail on the bottom that's like a more of a traditional rectangular shape. And that, once they see that and they get their hands on it, I'm like, oh, this little rail's perfect. I mean, I had one guy who told me, he's like, I think you should put the rail on everything, and then space above it becomes your creative space to do whatever you want. And, I took that one with a little grain of salt. I'm like, well, okay.
Well, I think
give people what they want, right?
I think you stumbled into the irony, situational irony there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that one of the definitions of irony, when I was looking it up, was, and I think it was a reference in the first story Sean told, was when the outcome is different from what you expect.
Yes.
People have a hard time seeing something that looks like a sign. That's essentially what they look like.
Yeah, they're sign. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because they have words. They're engraved. They look like a wooden sign. People have a hard time understanding or anticipating, I guess is the right word, that something could have a dual use, an unexpected use. I mean, I think it's something people find, like we talked about, the kids hanging from the door frame. They see a door and they think, oh, I'll hang from that and pull up. But at the same time, they don't think that that's what it's intended for.
Right.
Or what I really love that you found something, because I've known you now, about 4 years, since the makerspace. you've been looking for things to satisfy both making and artistic output. And it's fun seeing you find something that seems to have. It seems to be hitting on a lot of pistons for you. You know.
That this one's like
it's creative.
That's what I described. It's like a little bit of a crossroads.
Yeah, I love seeing you find something that you're.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one.
I can tell.
Pretty excited.
Love that, man.
Like, this is a cool opportunity where, like, you can kind of, like, consider that a feature, not a bug, right? That it's like that's that invitation thing. That it's like, you know, you're like, unless you're a climber, you don't get it. Like that your customers could almost feel like an inclusive community. That it's like, we're glad other people don't get it.
Right.
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
If someone else walked into the room, they'd be like, "Oh, cool sign," and you're like, "Yeah, cool sign," and then they hang 10 on it.
Watch what I can do on the sign. Yeah.
That's exactly how I envision it. And even some of the hardcore climbers, where they're just like, they're sort of used to the traditional hangboard, right? That's for pretty serious climbing, and they start like deconstructing, like, well, this pocket's good, but this isn't good, and whatever, right? The angles, and I'm like, well, you're not. This isn't.
Yeah.
You're not. Right. This isn't for training. This is for like showing off, right? To your.
But at the same time, though, isn't that the ultimate in training? Though, is encountering handholds that aren't perfect.
That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm coming from. But they don't. You know, the really hardcore guys get it in their head that they got to train a specific way, right?
They're wrong, though, aren't they?
This disrupts. I don't know. This is where it also gets into, like, I am not. I mean, some of these guys are definitely better climbers than I am, so I have no idea. But yeah, that, at least from my approach, is like, hey, this sort of disrupts and sort of makes you rethink how you might be able to use this in a way that that gives you some variation, right, that you don't normally find. But at a minimum, I envision it more as like, hey, it looks cool on a wall or above a doorway, and people kind of like hot dogging off of it, right? Just showing off and maybe having a little contest of like who can hang on this like ridiculously shaped, you know, off the letter S, right? or the letter M, where you can kind of get three fingers in this weird position, kind of the crook of the M there in the middle. I could see a couple friends around sort of having a little a friendly, you know, game of one-upmanship to see who could do it the longest off those weird features. So we'll see.
Are you guys familiar with the term visual disruption? The concept? So, like, that's kind of interesting opportunity here you have, Tanju, where it's like, so right now, there's like, people love to talk about visual disruption in advertising. So people are so inundated with advertising images that they don't register anymore. So if you have like a slick graphic design poster, people won't stop because it just looks like part of the visual landscape. So the disruption part comes in where you might have a commercial where like the girl is missing a tooth. Or that, like in the case of that Burger King ad where there was like a weird, creepy Burger King guy, that it's like, it looks unnatural or it looks creepy. So basically the idea is that like you have to disrupt like the normal processing of the image. So like that's what's going on with these, and Bret probably summed it up great, that it's like people are like, they scan an image, they're like, oh, I get it, it's a sign, and they stop processing. So, like, you have to figure out, like, how to disrupt them to stop thinking. So, does that mean, like, that it has to be video, or that, like, it has to be shot from the side, or, like, you know?
I don't know. I don't know that he needs to as a marketing kind of thing. I think it's actually kind of cool because the way he, you know, because Tanju's involved in the sport, I think it lends a certain, like, wait, what? You know, you get a kind of a moment of, like, hey, wait, what? You know,
and I think I'm going to approach it very grassroots. Where actually just this morning it occurred to me, like, oh, there's another local climbing competition a week later, March 2nd, I think, that I could, and I totally should make a hangboard for that event, right, and let them raffle it off as well, and that gives it some exposure, right, because you're winning a raffle prize. People are going to be. It's going to be very unique compared to the more traditional prizes they're going to be giving away. And it's going to be, and the whole point is that right now I'm at the point where it's still highly customizable, right? So I'll be able to customize it specific for that event. If we can get some traction that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be fun.
It's fun having, again, like I say, I don't know Sean nearly as well as you. It's just, I have to say, I get immense pleasure out of watching you enjoy this.
Oh, cool. Well, it's funny because it is, and it's like, it's like a woodworking, wood carving project.
Oh,
it's a couple of like disciplines, right? The CNC, the hand painting.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you gave me that can of spray paint this weekend, Bret, and I was going to use it, but it was raining outside, and the spray paint box that you designated had a bunch of weird white powder in it, where I was like, what the heck is this? This is going to get all over my... So I ended up painting it by hand. I just got I found some black paint in the craft room, and it was kind of a nice zen, relaxing experience to just go in. Took me 20 minutes, right? And I got to got down and just focus on doing some painting, where if I'd spray painted it, it'd be 2 minutes max, right? And kind of stinky. And also earlier today, Mike sends me a text, me and Alex, about some new member. I don't know the whole backstory. Something about a laser cutter. But anyways, this guy was talking about how he used a HTC Vive virtual reality rig to sculpt a 3D object, a Dungeons and Dragon character that then he ended up printing with a resin printer. And Mike was like, "Hey, wouldn't it be so cool if we could use Alex? If you could use your HTC Vives, and we could have a meetup at the space, and he could show us what he did it, and then he has a resin printer, and he can print them at home, and he can print little figures of whatever you design in virtual reality." And I was like, I don't have any opinion about that. If people want to do it, that sounds cool. And Mike responded of well, that's not the reaction I was thinking about. And I didn't respond, but I was like, well, right now I'm kind of just interested in carving wood in real life, not carving something in virtual reality that then has print.
But ultimately, isn't this what's great about a makerspace sort of environment, though? I mean, you and I have gotten to be friends over making.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I still remember meeting you, bringing in that stupid busted up bicycle to make a car out of. I'm thinking, weird. Okay, weird.
That was weird.
But I've got to also be really close friends. I actually count you and Mike as some of my closest friends right now.
Yeah.
And it's all but none of the three of us, I kind of see that, from my perspective, it's a threesome, that we don't come from the same place. We don't have the same priorities. We don't have the same aesthetics. We don't have... I
don't think we would even cross paths.
Oh, gosh, no, I don't think so.
Even you, Sean, I don't think you and I would have ever crossed paths.
Yeah, same here.
If you hadn't seen me at the Minicon event, right, and we took up that whole room and we were pretty vibrant and excited, and I wouldn't have even been at Minicon if it wasn't for the Maker Station either, because I'm not interested in, or I wasn't. I'm becoming interested, but I'm not interested in cosplay for the sake of cosplaying, which is what that Minicon was specifically a cosplay event, was their target.
I think there's another interesting, I don't know if you call it lesson, but Bret touched on it, that he said he's really enjoying this project, and I think there's something to be understood about the fact that not all projects are equal. So, if I make a painting, it's kind of a closed loop. If I paint a portrait of someone, maybe they like it, maybe their family likes it, right? But your project that you're making, these hangboards, it's everyone can kind of noodle about it. It's this guy's what if we did it in 3D? And I was well, what if I made a logo for it? And there's just so many different entry points. It's a great, it has a lot of legs, obviously, but it also has a lot of entry points, which is kind of cool.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I've been looking for a project like this.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But, yeah, and I think Bret was alluding to. So Bret's had some level of success where he designed some, I describe them as little rigs and jigs for these expensive cameras that they use in the film industry, and been able to sell them and make a little bit of money to feed the hobby, essentially. I had hadn't found anything like that.
And you'd been looking, as I recall.
Yeah, I was like trying to think like, okay, what could I work in a totally different industry and whatever. It just nothing was clicking. And then even Brett and I even noodled on, we were making these nice wheel chocks for cameramen. We started by welding them, and then we're like, there's got to be an easier way to make them, and then made them out of aluminum and brazed aluminum, and it was kind of a cool project, but then it was like, how much can you really sell them for? And at the end of the day, they're just like wheel chocks. They're hard to get excited about to that point. Not a lot of entry points of just things you can do. It's just a very
and you're not getting rich doing it.
Not getting rich, just a very little niche functional tool for a particular industry, right? But this one with the hangboards, it's decorative. It's got a lot of opportunity to customize to like meet a lot of different interests that people might have. Very tangible, and I really I'm hoping I think the next month we'll see if we're able to get some legs. So just this past week, I actually set up a little Gumroad store on gumroad.com. So I have two up there for sale now, listed $150 a pop. If anybody's listening and wants to buy one. Yeah.
I'm sure Double Primer has a lot of climbers.
Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe you should call a Double Climber spin-off podcast about climbing.
That's kind of, if I get laid off, I'll go be a maker climber guy. See how we.
Yeah, it's funny. You see, you worry about being laid off. I keep thinking, what am I going to make? How am I going to make money when I retire?
That too. Yep. I still got a little ways to go before retirement.
But we go back to, I take a lot of pleasure in watching. I don't know, man. That's one of the things about the whole maker movement, the maker space is when we do open houses, one of the things I always pitch to people is it's not about just access to tools, which it's important. It's access to people. It's access to, I don't know, there's certainly kind of an excitement of seeing other people getting excited about projects.
Seeing the light bulbs go off in their head, right, when they...
Yeah, or, even things like, we have this member who's making these, like, articulated legs things that Mike has gotten involved in helping her design them better and repeatable. I have zero interest in that kind of thing, but at the same time, I get a lot of pleasure out of helping her overcome some mechanical obstacle that she's trying to resolve.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, satisfaction in seeing other people overcoming the same kind of challenges, but in a different sort of aspect. And there's always
real specific to their interest, right? So
yeah. Well, there's also that whole element of realizing you're not, this crazy desire to create and make things
that are commercially available. There's bars and there's sports and there's movies and there's all sorts of forms of entertainment out there to cater to all these different needs. Mm-hmm. But just to have a place where you can, it's almost like a park, right? With a grass field. This is how I've really started to think. Because also I get pressure and feedback and you see others who are like, this. And even when I went to the White House, right? I think I was really inspired by that, but Brett, you're like, God, they want us to solve world hunger, they want the makerspace to solve world hunger. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I got enough problems as it is.
I want to get this coffee table done.
Yeah, and I've sort of changed my thinking. Like, I really want the makerspace to be more of like a public park, right? Mm-hmm. Where people want to come play soccer. There's a field, right? If people want to come play American football, they can do that too, right? You're not going to dictate this is only a football field, there's only a soccer field there. You got a little playground, and it's like it allows just people to get out and do stuff. And at the space, it's a creative thing that they're doing with building, right, and fabricating.
Yeah, we built a playground.
Yeah. And it's pretty cool. It's working.
Another aspect of that playground idea, though, for me, and the Maker Station was the fact that you mentioned people want to play soccer in the park. What's fun about the park is that you go be like, I'm going to play catch with my friend. You go to the park, and all of a sudden you're playing soccer. So at the Maker Station, it's like
a tree.
Yeah,
right?
I came into the MakerStation thinking like maybe someone here could like work with me on a project of one of my projects. Maybe I could paint their sculpture. Maybe whatever. I had these visions, and then however many months later, I'm doing a podcast with you guys, which is like something that either of us like would have predicted at that meeting, right?
Right.
And it's like the only certainty is that something's going to happen, but no matter how much you plan, it's going to be different than what you think. It's going to change. It's going to be.
Wait,
it's going to evolve.
we just came back to ironic. We just came back to ironic. The expectation and how you came back to situational irony of things aren't what you expect, or things aren't going to turn out the way you expect.
And like,
nice bringing that home, Sean. Way to go.
Thank you. And also, like
So yeah, lots of topics for future discussion. So definitely
I'd
love to have you back sometime, Brad.
Yeah, we didn't even get to boxes.
We didn't. Yeah, I was thinking, wood carving, carving hangboards. That might lead into some carpentry to talk about boxes, but we can definitely leave that for another day. We're running on an hour and 10 minutes here.
Yeah. Well, ironically, we ran out of time.
Yep.
So, is there anything you want to plug, Brett?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. The show I was referencing earlier is The Passage. It's on Monday nights on Fox TV. Please check it out. We do the ratings, so I'll get another season out of it. I'd love to go back to work.
Okay.
And for millennials, can they find that on Hulu the week after?
Yes, they can. That's how my wife watches it. She doesn't stay up that late. It's on at 9 on Mondays.
What did we fix this week, Sean? You had something here about a tire, or changing a tire. What do you tell us about that?
And so it has a good, ironic twist to the ending, and maybe you guys can relate. So my sister had a tire blowout, and so I went to go fix, so she wouldn't have to get the jack, and she wouldn't have to, do it. I was going to do it for her. So we opened up her trunk, and I was like, could you get, the ratchet set out as I put it up on the jack? And then she opens it up, and there's no ratchets in the case. And I was like, oh man, what are we going to do? We have to call AAA or something. And she's like, no problem. We're in a Walmart parking lot. I'll go buy some. So she goes in, and then she comes out with a brand new set, right? And then I start using it, and I'm like, man, it's really hard to get onto these bolts. They're really, it's an awkward place where my hand has to go. And then I realize the reason why the ratchets weren't in there is because the last time I changed her tire, the jack, that tool also doubles as the thing that I can take the bolts off.
I was trying to think of the name. It's not crowbar. What's the name of that?
I bet we were nodding because I know where this is going.
Yeah, and I was like, and the funny part, if you want to call it funny, is that the last time this happened, I was like, go take the ratchets out so I won't make this mistake again. I don't want to make this mistake. Yeah. But I did the exact same mistake 3 years later.
Nice.
Well,
you got yeah, it changed, right?
Yeah.
Well, I just have to say, my initial reaction to this story, so you said ratchet set. I went, wait, that's not the right tool.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I thought maybe you broke the ratchet set. You tire off with them.
Oh, that was funny. You made me laugh. That was great.
Nice. All right. I got to run. It's great talking to you guys.
Yeah, that was fun. Let's definitely do that again. I'd love to come do this again.
Okay.
Awesome.
Bye, guys.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
Find more information at doubleprimer.com.